The galaxy had been quiet for 3,000 years. Every star system, every space station, every alien world had moved forward without thinking about the humans. They told themselves it was better this way. Earth was gone, they said. The humans were too dangerous, too wild, too unpredictable to live among the peaceful races of the galaxy. The Helix Council had made the decision. They were tall, blue-skinned beings who controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes. Behind them stood the Nexer Empire, creatures made of living crystal who sparkled like diamonds in starlight. Together, they had convinced hundreds of smaller, alien races that humanity needed to die. Captain Talar Voss never expected to find anything in the Sol system. He was a career officer in the Helix Deep Survey Fleet, mapping dead star systems for mineral deposits. His ship, the Eternal Wind, was on a routine patrol when the sensors started screaming warnings that made no sense. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy readings from the third planet," his science officer reported, tentacles writhing with confusion. But the scanners show nothing but dead rock. Voss stared at the readings on his command screen. The numbers were impossible. Dead planets didn't generate energy signatures that could power entire star systems. He had studied the reports from 3 millennia ago. Earth had been completely destroyed, its surface turned to glass, its oceans boiled away into space. "Take us closer," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep." As the Eternal Wind moved deeper into the Sol system, the energy readings grew stronger. But their visual scanners showed exactly what the old reports claimed: a lifeless world of gray stone and empty craters. The moon hung in its orbit like a silent witness to ancient destruction. "There's something wrong here," Voss muttered, studying the data streams. "The gravitational readings don't match what we're seeing." His science officer's eyes went wide. "Captain, I'm detecting massive gravitational anchors. They're creating some kind of temporal field around the planet. It's like time is moving differently there." Before Voss could respond, his weapons officer shouted a warning. "Ships approaching. Multiple contacts, moving at impossible speeds." The vessels that emerged from hidden bases throughout the Sol system looked like nothing in any alien database. They were sleek and organic, their hulls seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. They moved through space with a grace that defied physics, turning and accelerating in ways that should have torn apart any crew inside. "Open communications," Voss ordered, his voice tight with fear. The face that appeared on his screen was human, but somehow different from the historical records. The man looked to be in his 30s, with dark hair and eyes that held depths of knowledge no human should possess. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am Captain Lee Minho of the Earth Defense Force," the human said calmly. "You have entered restricted space." "It's impossible," Voss breathed. "Earth was destroyed 3,000 years ago." "We have the records. We have the proof." Lee Minho smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Earth was buried, not destroyed. Hidden beneath layers of exotic matter and temporal fields. "We have been waiting, Captain Voss. Waiting and watching and learning." The Helix captain felt ice in his veins. "Learning what?" "Everything. Your ship designs, your weapons, your weaknesses. We have had 3,000 years to study every race that participated in our supposed extinction. We know you better than you know yourselves." Round the Eternal Wind, more human ships materialized, as if from thin air. They moved in perfect coordination, surrounding the alien vessel without a single wasted motion. Their weapons, if they had any, remained hidden, but Voss could feel the threat in their positioning. "What do you want?" he asked Justice Lee. Minho replied, "The galaxy tried to murder our entire species because they feared what we might become. They were right to be afraid, but they made one critical mistake. They left us alive." The human ships began to move closer. The Eternal Wind's weapons systems activated automatically, but the targeting computers couldn't lock on to the enemy vessels. They seemed to exist in multiple places at once, their hulls bending light around them like water. "Your weapons won't work," Lee Minho said, reading the confusion on Voss's face. "We have learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. 3,000 years of focused development tends to produce remarkable results. Within minutes, the Eternal Wind was disabled. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply stopped. Its engines shut down, its weapons went offline, and its life support systems were placed under human control. The crew could only watch helplessly as boarding pods attached to their hull. When the humans came aboard, they moved with the confidence of beings who had planned this moment for millennia. They were armed with devices that hummed with unknown energy, wearing armor that seemed to absorb the ship's lighting. But it was their eyes that truly frightened the alien crew, eyes filled with the patience of a species that had learned to think in terms of centuries rather than years. Captain. Captain Lee Minho stepped onto the bridge of the Eternal Wind and looked around with satisfaction. "Take them to the holding cells," he ordered his soldiers. "Treat them well. They are going to be our messengers." As the alien crew was led away, Voss caught a glimpse through the ship's viewports. The dead surface of Earth was falling away like a shed skin, revealing the blue and green world beneath. Cities sparkled in the darkness, connected by streams of light that pulsed with life and energy. Humanity had returned. The galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Park Jisoo stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars bend around them as her fleet prepared to emerge from folded space. She had lived her entire life knowing this moment would come. Born 70 years ago in the hidden cities beneath Earth's false surface, she had grown up listening to stories of the galaxy that had tried to kill her people. Time worked strangely. In the compression fields that hid Earth, while only a few years passed in the outside galaxy, entire generations of humans lived and died in the accelerated time beneath the planet's disguised surface. Jisoo's great-grandmother had been alive when Earth was buried. Her great-granddaughter would live to see humanity rule the stars. "Admiral, we're approaching the target zone," her navigation officer reported. Lieutenant Kim Do-yeon was young even, by compressed time standards, but he had trained his entire life for this mission. His hands moved across controls that responded to his thoughts as much as his touch. The human ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were grown in vast bioforges deep beneath Earth's surface, their hulls alive with neural networks that could think and adapt faster than any computer. The metal seemed to flow like liquid, reshaping itself as needed. Weapons emerged from smooth surfaces only when required, then disappeared again without a trace. "Target confirmed," Jisoo said, studying the massive structure ahead of them. "Kethmoran Station. 3,000 years they've kept watch over our grave. Time to show them what the dead can do." Kethmoran was enormous, a fortress city floating in space that housed over 50 million helix beings. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets. Shields could withstand the explosion of a small star. For 3 millennia, it had been the galaxy's first line of defense against the possibility that humans might somehow return. The Helix commanders on the station never saw the attack coming. Reality simply twisted around Kethmoran as space folded, in ways that violated every known law of physics. Human ships materialized inside the shield perimeter, appearing from angles that shouldn't exist. Some emerged from above and below simultaneously. Others seemed to step sideways through dimensions, arriving from directions that had no names. "All ships begin the operation," Jisoo commanded. Her voice was calm, carrying none of the emotion she felt inside. This was justice. But it was also the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. The human weapons didn't blast through Kethmoran's defenses. Instead, they reached through them, ignoring shields and armor as if they weren't there. Beams of twisted energy struck at the station's core systems, not destroying them, but rewriting their basic functions. The massive fortress began to shut down piece by piece, its own systems turning against it. Within minutes, Kethmoran was completely helpless. Its weapons were offline, its communications were jammed, its life support systems remained active. But under human control, 50 million alien beings found themselves prisoners in their own fortress. Jisoo's ship docked with the station's command center. She walked through corridors filled with cowering Helix soldiers, her footsteps echoing. In the sudden silence, The station's commanding officer, a tall blue-skinned alien named General Kexteran, waited for her in what had been his private office. "You're human," he whispered, staring at her as if she were a ghost. "But that's impossible. We destroyed your world. We watched it burn." "You buried us," Jisoo corrected, settling into his chair behind his desk. "There's a difference. We've been very much alive, General, waiting, planning, learning everything we could about the species that tried to murder us. Her soldiers were already connecting their equipment to the station's communication systems. Within moments, they had access to every major communication network in the galaxy. The message that went out was simple but devastating. Footage of Keth Morin's capture and Admiral Park Jisoo sitting calmly in the conquered command center. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying to billions of alien beings across thousands of worlds. "For 3,000 years, you have lived with the lie that humanity was destroyed. You told yourselves it was mercy, that we were too dangerous to live among you. You were right to fear us, but you made one critical mistake." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. On countless worlds, alien leaders were staring at their screens in horror, finally understanding that their greatest nightmare had come true. "You left us alive, hidden beneath layers of exotic matter and temporal fields. We have spent 3 millennia preparing for this moment. We are no longer the species you tried to destroy. We are what you made us, patient, powerful, and utterly committed to justice." The response was immediate. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Military commanders activated ancient defense protocols. Fleets that had been mothballed for centuries were brought back into service. "Stand down your fleets," Jisoo continued, her voice never rising above a conversational tone. "Dissolve your councils, submit to human authority, and we will show mercy. The same mercy you showed us 3,000 years ago." She smiled, and it was an expression that would haunt the nightmares of an entire galaxy. "Resist us, and learn why humans were feared across the stars." The message ended, but its effects would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity had returned, and they had brought with them technology that made the old powers look like children playing with toys. The age of alien dominance was over. The age of human supremacy had just begun. Commander Kim Dae-ho watched the enemy fleet approach through the viewport of his flagship. 1,200 ships stretched across space like a metallic ocean, their hulls gleaming with the combined might of the Helix-Nexer alliance. It was the largest military force assembled in over 1,000 years, brought together for one purpose: to destroy the returning human threat once and for all. "They're beautiful," said his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Soyoung, studying the enemy formation. "Look how perfectly they move together. Centuries of military tradition in those formations." Dae-ho nodded thoughtfully. "Beautiful, yes. And completely predictable. We've been studying their battle tactics for 3,000 years. Every maneuver, every strategy, every weakness." He turned to his crew. 50 ships against 1,200. They think numbers will save them. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The human fleet was tiny compared to the approaching armada. Their ships looked almost organic, their hulls flowing and shifting like living creatures. Unlike the rigid geometric patterns of the alien fleet, the human vessels moved in seemingly random formations that somehow felt perfectly natural. Admiral Bixthalon of the Helix fleet opened communications from his massive command ship. Blue face filled the screen, confidence radiating from every feature. "Human commander, you are outnumbered 24-1. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." "Thank you for the offer," Dae-ho replied politely, "but I think we'll pass. You see, Admiral, you're thinking in terms of ships and numbers. We're thinking in terms of physics and possibility." The battle began without ceremony. Open fire with weapons that could crack planets, energy beams that blazed across space like miniature stars. But the human ships simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. They slipped through dimensions, folded space around themselves, and emerged from angles that shouldn't exist. Lieutenant Choi Min-seok, barely 25 years old in compressed time, guided his ship through the enemy formation like a dancer. Moving through still water, His vessel's living hull adapted to every threat, absorbing energy weapons and converting them into fuel. When alien missiles tried to track him, his ship simply stepped sideways through reality, leaving the projectiles to explode harmlessly in empty space. "Target their command ships first," Deho ordered. "Cut off the head and the body will follow." The human weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy's experience. They didn't blast through shields or armor. Instead, they reached through them, operating on quantum levels that bypassed traditional defenses entirely. Energy beams that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously struck at the molecular bonds holding enemy ships together. Admiral Vexthalin watched in growing horror as his flagship's shields simply ignored the incoming attack. The human weapon passed through his defenses like they were made of air, striking directly at his ship's central computer core. Within seconds, his vessel was dead in space. Its systems shut down, but its crew still alive. "Impossible," he whispered, staring at readings that made no sense. "Our shields are rated to stop anything in the galaxy." "Your shields work fine," came Deho's voice over the communication system. "Our weapons just don't care about them." 3,000 years of technological development tends to produce interesting results. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, human fleet had lost 3 ships to unlucky accidents, collisions with debris from destroyed enemy vessels. The Helix-Nexer alliance had lost everything. 1,200 ships floated powerless in space, their crews alive but completely helpless. But Commander Kim Deho knew that military victory was only the beginning. Dr. Choi Yuna had taught him that the real war was fought in the minds of the enemy. Fear was more powerful than any weapon, and psychological warfare could achieve what armies could not. On Nexer Prime, the crystalline beings lived in cities that were works of art. Their towers rose like frozen music, each structure perfectly tuned to resonate in harmony with their crystalline bodies. It was their greatest achievement, the symbol of their superiority over flesh-based life forms. Dr. Choi Yuna had spent decades studying Nexer architecture. She understood exactly how their crystal cities worked, and more importantly, how to turn them into weapons against their creators. From hidden human installations throughout the galaxy, she activated devices that had been placed years earlier. The great spires of Nexer Prime began to sing. At first, it was beautiful, a harmony that made the crystal beings feel proud and strong. But slowly the frequency changed. The towers began to resonate at wavelengths that threatened to shatter Nexer molecular structure. The beings watched in terror as their greatest achievements became instruments of torture. "Stop this," the Nexer Emperor broadcast desperately. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing you can give," came the reply from Dr. Choyuna. "This is what you did to us 3,000 years ago. You tried to destroy our entire species. Now you know how it feels to face extinction." Meanwhile, on the Helix homeworld, their sun began to flicker. Advanced human devices, operating on scales smaller than atoms, had infiltrated the star's fusion core. The sun wouldn't die, but it would remind the Helix daily that humans could snuff out their world with a single thought. Across the galaxy, smaller powers watched the great alliances crumble. Some surrendered immediately, begging for human mercy. Others tried to flee beyond the galactic rim, seeking refuge in the empty spaces between galaxies. A few attempted to hide, hoping the storm would pass them by. None of it mattered. Humanity had learned patience during their long exile. They would find every species that had participated in Earth's burial, and they would exact their price. The galaxy's age of peace was over. Age of human judgment had begun. Dr. Han Salmon sat in her office deep beneath Earth's surface, surrounded by holographic displays showing psychological profiles of every major alien leader in the galaxy. She had spent 40 years of her life studying these beings, learning their fears, their weaknesses, their deepest shame. Now it was time to use that knowledge. The Helix prize honor above everything else, she explained to her team of specialists. Their entire society is built on the idea that their leaders are brave, noble, and pure. What happens when we prove that's a lie? Her assistant, Dr. Lee Ji-hoon, pulled up files that had taken centuries to compile. "We have complete records on every Helix hero from the past 3,000 years. Battle footage, personal communications, secret documents. Most of them are not what their people believe. Salman smiled coldly. Then let's show the galaxy who their heroes really are. Across Helix space, every communication network suddenly displayed the same information. General Caxthorin, the great war hero who had supposedly died fighting space pirates, was shown abandoning his troops to save himself. Admiral Yexthera, celebrated for her mercy toward defeated enemies, was revealed torturing prisoners for information. One by one, the greatest figures in Helix history were exposed as cowards, criminals, and frauds. The effect was devastating. Helix society, built on thousands of years of tradition and honor, began to crumble. Citizens who had named their children after these heroes now felt sick with shame. Military units refused to follow orders from commanders whose reputations had been destroyed. The entire government structure started to collapse as people lost faith in their leaders. "Please," begged Chancellor Vexton in a desperate broadcast to Earth, "stop this madness. Our people are suffering. They've done nothing wrong, haven't they?" Salman replied calmly. "They voted for the destruction of Earth. They celebrated when they thought we were dead. They made heroes of the beings who tried to commit genocide against our species. Now they're learning the truth about their perfect society." But the Helix were not her only target. The Nexer Empire had always believed they were superior to all flesh-based life forms. Their crystal bodies were perfect, they claimed, without the weakness and chaos of biological systems. They lived in perfect harmony, their thoughts synchronized, their forms geometrically precise. Dr. Salman had spent years developing something special for them. Not a weapon that would kill, but something far more cruel. A biological agent that would slowly corrupt their perfect crystalline structure, introducing random elements that would make their bodies asymmetrical and chaotic. "Deploy the Harmony virus," she ordered. The virus spread through Nexer space like a whisper. It didn't harm the crystal beings directly, but it began to change them. Perfect geometric faces developed random facets. Synchronized thoughts became individual and contradictory. Bodies that had been identical for millions of years began to show unique variations. The Nexer watched in horror. As their perfect society became diverse and unpredictable, some tried to cut away the corrupted parts of their bodies. But the virus had integrated too deeply into their molecular structure. They were becoming individuals instead of a collective, and for a species that had prized uniformity above all else, it was a fate worse than death. "We are no longer perfect," wept the Nexer collective mind, its voice now containing dozens of individual thoughts instead of one unified consciousness. "We are becoming like the flesh beings we despised." Salman agreed. "You are becoming like us. Perhaps now you'll understand why we deserve to exist." For the smaller powers that had supported Earth's destruction, Lieutenant Colonel Kong Min-jae offered a different choice. He was a practical man who understood that fear and mercy could be more effective than pure punishment. "You have two options," he announced to the representatives of over 300 minor species. "You can face the same fate as the Helix and Nexer, or you can accept human protection and guidance." The price was simple, but humiliating. Every species that wanted human mercy had to publicly acknowledge their role in Earth's attempted destruction. They had to apologize to humanity in front of the entire galaxy. Most importantly, they had to accept human monitoring of their military forces and government decisions. "We will place observers in your systems," Kong explained to a gathering of terrified alien ambassadors, "not to rule you, but to watch you, to make sure you never again decide that genocide is an acceptable solution to your fears." One by one, the smaller powers accepted the terms. They had watched the great alliances crumble and seen their heroes revealed as monsters. They had no choice but to submit to human authority or face destruction. The galaxy's political map was redrawn according to human design. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years were redirected through human-controlled space. Every major decision by alien governments had to be approved by human observers. Communication networks were monitored by human intelligence services, but the humans were clever in their control. They didn't rule directly like conquerors. Instead, they managed the galaxy like gardeners tending a vast garden. They allowed the alien species to keep their cultures, their traditions, their local governments. They simply made sure that those cultures could never again threaten humanity's existence. "We're not conquerors," Dr. Han Soman explained to her staff as they watched the new order take shape. "We're shepherds. We're making sure the flock never again decides to attack the shepherd." The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's technology and military might. They were learning to fear something far more dangerous: human patience, human intelligence, and human memory. The species that had tried to bury Earth had created their own eternal overseers. "Commander." Jinwoo pressed his hand against the cool metal of the observation window and watched the parade of alien ships. Approaching Earth's newest orbital station, 5 years had passed since humanity's return, and the galaxy looked completely different now. Where once there had been proud empires and independent alliances, now there was only a complex web of treaties and agreements that all led back to one simple truth: humans were in charge. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, grown rather than built, using techniques that still baffled alien scientists. Its living metal walls pulsed gently with their own heartbeat, and the corridors seemed to reshape themselves to accommodate whoever walked through them. It floated in Earth's orbit like a silver flower, beautiful and somehow alive. "Look at them," Jinwoo said to himself, watching as shuttle after shuttle docked with the station. 3,000 years ago, they came together to bury us. Now they can't get here fast enough to beg for our favor. Each arriving ship carried representatives from the galaxy's remaining powers. The Helix delegation brought gifts of rare minerals and ancient art treasures. The surviving Nexar crystals offered technological blueprints and scientific research. Hundreds of smaller species came with whatever they thought might please their human overseers: exotic foods, cultural artifacts, promises of loyalty. Dr. Shinhana walked up beside him, her tablet glowing with data streams and psychological profiles. She was one of Earth's leading experts on alien behavior, and her job was to read the minds of beings who thought their thoughts were private. "The Helix ambassador arrived an hour ago," she reported, scrolling through her observations. "His stress levels are off the charts. Heart rate elevated, skin temperature fluctuating, nervous system showing signs of chronic anxiety. His entire diplomatic team is suffering from what we might call civilizational trauma syndrome." Jinwoo nodded thoughtfully. "How long since their last peaceful night's sleep? According to our monitoring systems, most Helix officials haven't slept properly in over 3 years. They're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, wondering what punishment we might have planned for them next." "Perfect," Jinwoo said with satisfaction. "Fear of the unknown is more effective than any weapon. They'll spend the rest of their existence wondering what we're really capable of, and that uncertainty will keep them obedient better than any army." Through the viewport, he could see Earth itself hanging in space like a blue and green jewel. The planet had finally emerged from its temporal prison, its hidden cities now gleaming openly under natural sunlight. The artificial crust that had concealed humanity for 3 millennia had been dissolved, revealing a world that was more beautiful and advanced than it had ever been before. Children who had been born in the compressed time fields were now adults, and they were the first generation of humans to see their homeworld's true sky. They walked on surfaces that their grandparents had only dreamed of touching, breathing air that carried the scent of oceans and forests instead of recycled atmosphere. "The Nexar delegation is requesting a private audience," Dr. Shin reported. Checking her messages, they want to discuss what they call cultural rehabilitation programs. "I think they're hoping we can reverse the Harmony virus." Jinwoo almost smiled. The crystal beings had spent 5 years learning to live as individuals instead of a collective consciousness. Some had adapted well, discovering creativity and personal expression for the first time in their species' history. Others had gone mad from the isolation of being alone in their own minds. "Tell them we'll consider it," he said. "Let them hope for a while longer." Mixed with fear is a powerful combination. The first galactic assembly under human oversight was scheduled to begin in just a few hours. Representatives from over 400 species, gather in the station's main chamber to formally acknowledge the new order. They would sign treaties that recognized human authority over military matters, trade disputes, and territorial claims. Most importantly, they would pledge never again to threaten humanity's existence. But Jinwoo knew. The real victory wasn't in the signatures on documents or the formal ceremonies. The real victory was in the way alien children now learned human history in their schools. The way trade routes automatically diverted through human space. The way every major decision in the galaxy was quietly run past human observers before. "Being implemented, sir," came a voice from behind him. Lieutenant Park Seojin, one of the station's communication officers, approached with a datapad. "We're receiving final confirmations from the last few delegations. Is coming. Even the species that tried to flee to other galaxies have sent representatives." "Of course they have," Jinwoo replied. "They've learned that running from humans is pointless. We have patience, and we have long memories. We would have found them." Eventually, as he watched the final shuttles dock with the station, Jinwoo reflected on the strange justice of it all. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through superior numbers or overwhelming firepower. They had won by becoming exactly what their enemies had feared, a species so advanced, so patient, and so ruthlessly intelligent that resistance was simply unthinkable. The galaxy had tried to bury humanity to prevent them from achieving dominance. In doing so, they had given humans 3,000 years to evolve beyond. Their former limitations in return is something far more dangerous than their enemies had ever imagined. The buried had risen, the broken had returned whole, and the galaxy would never again underestimate the species that had turned their greatest fear into their ultimate victory.